Well, we are talking about heat expanding across the central part of the U.S. here in places that haven't seen much of it yet, and storms riding along its edge. So we continue to have heat advisory, excessive heat warnings for much of the West, California, Nevada, Arizona, up into Washington. And then expanding heat advisories across the southeast, mid-Atlantic, and northeast too. But in between, the upper Midwest has not seen much of the heat just yet. And we're going to start to see that heat expand, and on the edge of it, up along that thermal ridge, we're going to see chances of thunderstorms. Slight risk already of severe storms across much of Minnesota and in North Dakota here for Saturday, especially early Saturday potentially. So as the heat bubble or dome expands east, along the edge of it is where we see little ripples and disturbances that will touch off some storms. And places like Minnesota, North Dakota, Iowa into Wisconsin will be on the edge of most of the heat, and you get these little ripples, these little short waves, we call them upper level disturbances, which are essentially miniature cool fronts aloft, and that's enough to touch off instability, especially at night. By day, it's hot enough where there's a cap, but here's a cluster of some storms for northern Minnesota potentially early Saturday, and then maybe somewhere in Minnesota, Wisconsin on Sunday, and then again on Monday. Again, all of these riding along that eastern edge of the heat dome. Now, the spark to these storms is the low-level jet stream. So at night, as things cool off near the surface, we see winds a few thousand feet above the ground really accelerate. And that's coming from the south, pushing in warmer, more humid air. We call this warm air advection. And we can measure this by taking the temperature gradient, multiplying by the wind speed, and you get degrees per hour. And we get kind of a maximum here Friday night into early Saturday across the eastern Dakotas into western Minnesota. So that's where the focus for some of these storms will be. Now, the North American model produces quite the cluster of storms, which would keep things cooler on the Minnesota side here on Saturday if we get those storms to continue into the midday. Now, the high-resolution rapid refresh model keeps those storms much farther north and west, mostly out of places like Minnesota. European model is kind of somewhere in between. It has that line of some storms developing, but has it coming through very early Saturday. Then things clear out, it'll be hot, but that's the kind of scenario on the eastern edge of the heat dome. Is mainly overnight storm chances because by day the atmosphere is capped, but then you get that upper level wind to get going, and you can produce some storms. Now, same thing here Sunday. Already Storm Prediction Center's watching Minnesota, Iowa into Wisconsin, and Illinois. And then on Monday into Monday night, same area. So we're going to see these chances of clusters of storms developing, again, mostly in the overnight hours, but there are some major differences in the models. These are hard scenarios to forecast past 48 hours because the models are just all over the place and it can be hard to get them to form. But watch the heat expand as we head into Friday, getting more into the Dakotas and expanding more into the upper Midwest and the Central U.S. And then Saturday, similar thing here. Now watch the temperatures really expand, close to 90 for places like Minneapolis, St. Paul. Still hot in the west though too. And then by Sunday, things are really hot across much of the country. So this heat kind of fills in from west to east. Places like the Twin Cities, which haven't hit 90 yet this year, latest one in 31 years, looking at temperatures into the 90s and the heat index. We're going to get that maximum of muggy air here across the central U.S. where we normally expect it, but moving further north in these hotter situations. So triple-digit heat indices and storms along the edge of that heat possible here through the weekend.